My name is Ian Solitaire, and I first saw Mr. and Mrs. Rain the day after I moved into a contemporary bungalow on Soulmate Street in Linfield, Massachusetts in March 2022. Well, the day after my dog, Old Lady Sadie, a 12-year-old black lab boxer mix, and I moved onto Soulmate Street, that is. The male equivalent to an old lady with too many cats might be a young man with one dog. That's an unbalanced and unfair comparison, I know, but it's how I felt the moment Soulmate Street took me in. It magnified the loneliness that Sadie and I shared. Soulmate Street was tucked into the suburbs of Linfield, situated 6 minutes away from a shopping plaza by car. It was one of those neighborhoods that the American dream was hiding in, while failing infrastructure and inflation was still hunting it down in the cities. On this day after, Sadie was on the couch in my living room on Soulmate Street and shaking because there was a clap of thunder. The thunder had come and gone, but it remained in Sadie. I was standing at the window with my hands in the pockets of my khaki pants, the only suitable dance for smooth hands like mine, also hiding from failing infrastructure and inflation. It was bad enough there was a whole new place for her to be scared of, but now there loomed a thunderstorm. She had a phobia of hardwood floors because she didn't like how her paws skidded, click-clacked and skated on them, and our bungalow on Soulmate Street was strictly hardwood floor.
"It's okay, Sadie,"
I said, averting my eyes up to the sky that was infected with oyster shell clouds.
"This time of year, April showers bring me flowers."
The clouds were there, but they hadn't surrendered the earth their raindrops yet. They crept so nervously onto the stage, but the opera of a storm was near. I turned around chuckling.
"Pardon me, I forgot it's March."
She looked at me with scared brown eyes, confused about why the sky had scolded her. She smacked her lips and looked at me as if to ask me to make the sky bright again. It was indeed unnatural how grey and blue it was becoming on a Wednesday afternoon at only 1 o'clock, but I, unlike old Lady Sadie, had an affinity for thunderstorms. Little did I know, I wasn't the only one on Soulmate Street who had an affinity for thunderstorms. So much so that I'd second-guess my own. I turned around to face the window once again, and I had known Sadie long enough to know that she was performing one of her quirks she did whenever she got nervous, which was her circling her snout in the air as if to cast some kind of apology. It got so dark that I actually had to turn on the living room light. A burst of thunder came as if to tell me to turn my light off, but I disobeyed, and that made Sadie nervous. I heard the tag on her collar jingle as she did her signature head swirl again. I hoped the excitement in my voice would settle her.
"Ah, here it comes, Sadie,"
I exclaimed as rain started pelting Soulmate Street. Oh, how the lapis atmosphere collapsed. Another clap of thunder cracked apart, and rain began to strum along the street with every drop as delicate as glass. I'm not ashamed to say I giggled to myself. I was smiling triumphantly. The falling rain came in such an unbridled musical manner that it did have the characteristic of a guitar being constantly strummed, and Sadie's little tail beat against the couch like a drum. The wet sky was not classically trained, and it strummed angrily, forcing its music down on every gable and rooftop on Soulmate Street. And I watched Soulmate Street become the whole of an uninhabitable planet. My trance was broken when one of the houses across from my bungalow, a 2-story white house, opened up its door. A couple, my neighbors whom I hadn't met yet, skipped out of this house, across their perfectly verdant lawn and into the street, where the rain was the most violent. The man was skinny and taller than the woman. He had sandy, somewhat spiky hair and small eyes, and was in a plain black t-shirt and jeans. The woman was also in jeans but wore a sweater with horizontal red and black stripes. Her hair was a shade darker than his and bobbed. It seemed they had come out because it rained. I watched her open up her arms and spin, and seeing this, her partner did the same. They weren't the same as when they fled their house. His hair was getting patted down and gelled. The woman's hair a disassembled crown. It seemed the rain unlocked and greased their souls. I wish I heard the thunder of their mouths, the giggles thunder tries to replicate. How fleeting are our favorite storms. It waned. The prison riot in the sky relaxed via reluctant oyster-colored clouds. I blinked as if my lashes would make the storm come back, but some slower clouds were squeezing out their final drops. Sadie was silent behind me, maybe soothed by my deep concentration at the window. I watched the woman tilt her head backwards and catch the final droplets on her tongue. And yes, her partner did the same. The woman stepped away and clapped her hands. They smiled at each other like they had just gotten off some roller coaster that had loops and twists similar to our helix ribbons. In fact, they spun like strands of DNA. With their clothes sticking to their bodies and how wet they were, I could discern the undulations of their chests, the busy gallops of excited lungs, their faces, freshly scrubbed and polished busts. But the rain was over. All that was left was a residual gloominess in the atmosphere, so the couple went back into the White House from which they left. I remained at the window, in either confusion or wonder. Which one, I'm not sure. I turned around and saw Sadie, who had exhausted herself with all that worry. I went over to her to comfort her while I tried making sense of what I had just seen. The next day was a sunny day, and I made sure that their cars were in their driveway when I crossed the street with a shopping bag. Sadie was at the window in my bungalow, watching me cross. She let out a forlorn howl that was quelled when I turned around and waved at her. She departed from the window and was most likely pacing the bungalow and filling it with wines. I rang the doorbell of the White House and waited not half a minute before the door was opened by the woman who had celebrated in the street the other day. Her eyes were beaming, her teeth made to smile, and her hair was dry. She was shorter up close, maybe 5'2", and she was in black pants and a maroon sweater. "Hello," she sounded pleased. "You must be the new neighbor from across the street."
28 Soulmate Street, that's me.
She turned and called into the house, "Honey, our new neighbor's here." I didn't wait for the man. I lifted up my shopping bag and started speaking with the air of polite excuses.
I didn't mean to spy the other day, but I just really like thunderstorms, so I was at the window when it started to rain, and I noticed you two came jumping out.
The man appeared beside the woman, and the couple listened to me from the doorway with the anatomy of a happy home behind them.
I went to Market Street today. that plaza nearby, and I figured I'd get you to use some raincoats."
I handed the shopping bag to them. The woman took it, looked inside, and then up at the man. They looked back at me with faces caught between surprise and gratitude. The woman pulled out a pair of yellow rubber boots.
"Just a gift,"
I suggested. "Oh my goodness!" the woman gasped. "Usually it's the other way around." "What can we get you, son?" the man asked quickly, as if he was in debt and he was eager to pay it. I got shy.
"Oh, no, that's not necessary."
"But we should," the woman said as her man reached into the shopping bag and took out a yellow raincoat. She continued speaking. "What kind of cookies do you like?"
"Oh, chocolate chip, ma'am."
She gave her man a grin. "Did you hear that?" she whispered to him. "I am a ma'am." "I must be a sir, then," the man said before jetting out his hand. "We're the Rain couple." I shook his hand, smiling at my discovery.
"The Rain couple,"
I murmured.
"I am Ian Solitaire, and you may have heard my dog Sadie howling before I came over."
I know no other way to explain this, but he had the grip of old America. It would only be fitting later on when I found out that he coached for Little League in Linfield. He was striking, dashing, charming, but gruff like a pitcher. "Oh, please!" Mr. Rain exclaimed as if remembering something. "Come on in, son." "Do you like tea or coffee?" Mrs. Rain queried. I mulled it over on the way from the living room to the kitchen, only to say,
"Whatever you're having."
"Tea it is!" Mr. Rain exclaimed with the excitement of a home run in his voice. "Mrs. Rain has an affinity for tea, on account of my Irish grandma," she said. They sat me down at the granite island as they worked in synchronicity with getting out mugs, tea bags, and putting on the kettle. And instead of smelling like food or candles, I noticed the smell of an approaching rainstorm, which was impossible because of how sunny it was. While waiting for the kettle, Mr. Rain and I exchanged the typical "what do you do for work?" while Mrs. Rain tried on one of the yellow raincoats. At first my heart sank because it looked too big for her. But beneath the big yellow hood, she smiled and seemed to like how her hands didn't come out of the sleeves. I got distracted by her and wasn't paying attention to what Mr. Rain was saying. I nodded, though, to give the appearance of intent. The kettle whistled, and before we knew it, our 3 mugs fanned the same steam. Mr. Rain chuckled at his wife for having already put on the raincoat. I too felt the chuckle in me coming up like the steam from our mugs, because it was entertaining to see someone in a raincoat on such a sunny day. Mrs. Rain kept the yellow raincoat on the whole time I stayed for tea. The 3 of us sat on stools on the granite island while sunlight filled the kitchen. I don't remember what exactly were the topics of our conversations that day, but what I do remember is how accepted I felt. These people felt like a lost aunt and uncle. Better yet, characters from a movie. I do remember more clearly what we talked about when my tea was almost gone. The tea diminished, but the sun did not.
"So,"
I said.
"what was that yesterday?"
"A thunderstorm," Mrs. Rain answered, unprejudiced.
"No, I mean, you two coming out to run around in the rain. Wasn't it cold?"
I queried.
"And out into the middle of the street, no less. A car could have come."
A silence was swept between Mr. and Mrs. Rain before Mrs. Rain answered. "We love the rain." My head swam and a nod and a chuckle started in my voice.
"That's a little obvious. But why did you have to go outside in it and get all cold and wet? I watched the storm from my window.
We like that part, the getting cold and wet part, Mr. Rain answered. We like getting our hair wet.
Even your clothes?
I queried.
Do you dry off, change when you get back inside?
A wonderfulness came into Mrs. Rain's eyes when she answered me, No.
But your floors look spectacular,
I protested.
So did your couch, and nothing seems waterlogged or ruined.
I think the storm will only ruin you if you let it, Mrs. Rain suggested.
I can't do this with Sadie,
I thought aloud.
She's afraid of the rain.
This made Mrs. Rain giggle.
And you guys aren't afraid of lightning?
I asked after noticing the gold rings on their ring fingers. Oh, that's a myth, Mr. Rain said after noticing I had looked at his and his wife's wedding rings. He put up his hand to relay this, slightly wiggling his fingers.
Well, Mr. and Mrs. Rain,
I said, standing up.
I appreciate your hospitality and you being the first people I meet on Soulmate Street.
Mrs. Rain gasped and pointed at me. Chocolate chip cookies, she said, remembering. The raincoat hood slid down and covered the upper half of her face, but she brought up her other hand to fix it quickly. Mr. Rain shook my hand again with great sportsmanship, and they saw me to the door. What a long walk home it was from their house to my bungalow across the street. I think it only felt that way because their kitchen felt more like a home than the empty rooms of my bungalow, which didn't smell like muggy summer rain like theirs. April came, and April showers brought me flowers. I just so happened to be home while it rained one afternoon. This time I wasn't as excited for the storm as I was excited to watch Mr. and Mrs. Rain, for I knew surely they would come out. I ran up to my window at the first stroke of thunder, one which sounded like a tyrannosaurus roaring in the sky. Sure enough, the door of the Rain residence opened up and Mr. and Mrs. Rain came prancing out, but not in the rain boots and raincoats I had gotten them. My eyes went into a squint. Why weren't they wearing their raincoats? Their clothes looked so nice and comfortable, and now they were getting ruined in the rain. Sadie's tail thumped against the couch as the Tyrannosaurus beyond the oyster shell storm clouds roared again. But I couldn't pay Sadie any mind because I was watching Mr. and Mrs. Rain jump into the fastly forming paddles, trying to make splashes as big as they could. I wasn't offended or disappointed that they hadn't put on the raincoats I bought for them, but maybe I was a little confused. More than anything, I felt lost. I watched their hair darken and become matted down to their skulls. Even behind the curtains of inclement rain, I could discern the flicker of their lashes, the smiles that they communicated with like sonar used by dolphins that humans would never understand. Indeed, they moved with bliss that dolphins have. Their spirits sought the sea but got the rain, and rain was all the storm clouds ever had. And that was all they ever needed. They didn't want or need my raincoats. I took a deep breath and watched Mr. and Mrs. Rain celebrate the rain. Mrs. Rain threw her head back and caught some droplets on her tongue, and Mr. Rain did the same. Then he took her by the waist. They spun like clumsy ice skaters, and then he kissed her. The thunder echoed like it heard my heart, and heard how hollow that it had become. I felt like a fossil instead of a human while watching them. The next time it rained, they came out again, but this time So did I. I did it just to see what all the fuss was about. They didn't notice me at first, so I stood on my front lawn with my hands in my pockets while their laughter shattered the violent sprinkling of rain. I looked up into the sky, the rain constructing a hyperspace tunnel above my face. The thunder scolded me, telling me to get back into my house. "Ian!" Mrs. Rain shouted over the rain. The couple came to a clumsy stop, almost losing their balance.
Hello,
I said in a monotone fashion, not really enjoying being drenched by the rain. "How are you doing, Ian?" Mr. Rain queried. I waved, finding it hard to speak with all that rain beating my eyes and mouth.
Oh, I'm good. How are you?
The thunder answered on behalf of them. It was sunny the next day, and I found a plate of saran-wrapped chocolate chip cookies in front of my door when I got home from work. My lawn was fresh from the previous storms, but I had no garden decorations, no flamingos, stone turtles, or gnomes, so the plate of chocolate chip cookies had the brevity of a soul-surviving garden decoration. My lawn's first evidence of life. They didn't have to leave a note at all. I took the plate and went inside, where Sadie greeted me. Her eyes relayed that she had spent the day surviving her own inward apocalypse. I patted her head and put the cookies on the kitchen table. When I opened up the saran wrap, all that came was the final breath of a bakery, not something great and warm. The cookies had spent all day suffocating under the saran wrap while I was at work. Whatever fragrance they had before was gone. Still, I inhaled what was left. It was nothing compared to the rainy weather smell of Mr. and Mrs. Rain's house. That smell had stuck with me. They say the most distinctive smell to a human is the smell of a coming storm. And that was the smell of their house. I was new to adult and suburban conversations, so I wasn't sure if it was rude of me to ask what I did. It was their answer that made me feel this way.
Will you two ever have any children?
I asked on one of those sunny April days when I was over there for tea. At the Granite Island they went silent. "We've tried," Mr. Rain explained, putting his hand on Mrs. Rain's back. I could hear his skin make friction and rotations on her back as he talked very carefully. "The doctor said we can't." "It's just not possible for us," Mrs. Rain said.
Oh, I'm sorry,
I said quickly and meekly. "Don't be," she said with the faintest smile. Mr. Rain spoke with a kind of deflated humor in his voice. "We moved into Linfield 10 years ago because we liked the school system." He didn't have to elaborate for my heart to break just a little more for them.
What about adoption?
I asked with some preemptive regret. Mrs. Rain shrugged. "It's noble. I'm afraid we just aren't good enough people for that. It wouldn't be the same."
Well,
I mumbled, and mumbling because of the way sympathy was poisoning me.
I'm very sorry.
The couple lit up a little with apologetic smiles. "Don't be," Mr. Rain said. "We've made our peace with it." "It was difficult," Mrs. Rain admitted with memories of a foreign war in her voice. She looked at her husband and said, "But we got through it together." Life's a network of symbiotic relationships, and I think I was becoming interwoven with Mr. and Mrs. Rain. I admired their resilience, their attitude, the smell of their house, and the way they found celebration in the rain. Thankfully, Sadie fell off of my comfort, and the bungalow was becoming hers more than mine, for she slept where she went and spent the days however she wanted. I spent my time away from work in perplexion. Part of growing up is realizing humans are strange even when they're older than you. Even in the most mundane and idyllic of suburbs, you can find the beautiful missteps of the human spirit. An injured sense of wanting is a very human thing, and it can be found in the desert, in desolated slums, and in idyllic suburbs. Mr. and Mrs. Rain started involving me more in their lives. In May, I started attending the Little League games that Mr. Rain coached. Mrs. Rain and I sat in the bleachers and watched. Children had never seemed smaller to me until those days when I saw them in oversized hitter helmets and striped uniforms, sliding and wobbling to base. They invited me over to dinner, of which I was thankful. One thing that stuck out to me was how they didn't offer me wine until a little too late into the night, as if they had forgotten I was an adult too. I owned my own house and could legally drink, of course, but this seemed to escape them. On one occasion, Mrs. Rain commented about my 5 o'clock shadow, saying some remark about how it surprised her. And Mrs. Rain seemed like she was going to have a heart attack when I had a romantic interest over for dinner. I think she was watching me escort the woman to her car when the night was ending because she asked me, "Ian, who was that?" the next day.
"Someone who won't be dancing in the rain with me,"
I said.
"She ghosted me."
"Ghosted you? What's that?" I explained, and Mrs. Rain hugged me and pouted as if she just learned something terrible. I was learning that if you spend enough time with a couple, they start to adopt you, and part of me was tempted by the whimsical enamorment of it. But I knew it was wrong. They were playing house in a house they already had. I had a decision to make. Let this good couple continue their delusion, or confront them as sympathetically as I could. And though I was scared, I chose the latter one night at dinner at their house. It still smelled like a thunderstorm, even though Mrs. Rain had cooked something with spinach and mushrooms, a dish which would have filled the kitchen on any other occasion.
"Mr. and Mrs. Rain,"
I croaked, putting down my fork.
I have to address something."
Mrs. Rain froze while she was taking a pot off of the table and taking it to the sink. Mr. Rain looked up from his plate with the readiness of a father waiting to hear his son had enlisted in the army.
"We've been spending a lot of time together."
I winced, trying to get the struggle out of my voice.
"And I'm very thankful for how you two have been treating me. But I can't help but wonder if it's because you too see me as a child."
Their keen paralysis intensified.
"Have you two been pretending that I am the son you never had?"
I finally asked. I thought Mrs. Rain was going to drop the pot. I expected Mr. Rain to shout at me, but he looked too suddenly sad. Regret swelled up inside me as I watched her eyes darken and her face scrunch into a pout. Despite this, she tried maintaining the attitude she usually put up. All she could do for a while was shake her head. Mr. Rain kept staring at me the whole time, probably deciding whether to be angry or sad. "I thought it from the moment you got us those raincoats. You looked just like I'd thought he'd be," Mrs. Rain squeaked. "A cherub. All grown up." "Whoever raised you did a fine job, son," said Mr. Rain with his sense of good sportsmanship. I hurried to speak.
I don't mean to offend."
"No." Mrs. Rain shook her head, put the pot down and wiped her eyes. "We're sorry. We shouldn't have latched onto you like this."
"Latched onto me?"
I wondered aloud. Then something clicked in my brain.
"If you guys can adopt me, then you can surely adopt a baby for real." I'm too old to be your son. I'll help. I'll help you guys through the adoption process.
You'd help us? Mrs. Rain chirped like an injured bird. I recoiled in surprise.
Of course I would.
Mr. Rain stood up with a Viking vigor to him, and at first I thought he was going to flip the table at me, but he didn't. He was on the verge of tears as well. "You're a fine man, son," he said fervently. It has been 2 years since that night in the kitchen of Mr. and Mrs. Rains. It's October 2024 now, and Sadie is still kicking despite all odds. I was going to rake leaves the other day, but it started to rain. It was only out of instinct that I looked out the window, but it was out of admiration that I smiled. Mrs. Rain was walking a toddler in a little yellow raincoat down the sidewalk. She was also in a raincoat, the one I had gotten her, but the hood was down, giving her hair the appearance of melting. How unbalanced the toddler walked, and how patient Mrs. Rain was. There came a clap of thunder, and I heard the distinctive cry of a child. Mrs. Rain swiftly picked the toddler up and carried them into the White House across the street. I turned to see Sadie on the couch. I had a whole lot to think about, and she had nothing to say. Not many dogs do. I felt something similar to what the tea had made me feel 2 years ago. I sat down with Sadie and we listened to the storm together. God couldn't give them children. God gave them the rain, just not as much as he had given Noah. The stork was lost inside their favorite storms.